effect is just a continuous rise in consumption of oil. At the same time, the International Energy Agency produced what they call an alternative scenario. Not the business as usual scenario, but one in which every policy of every government in the world that is on the books to reduce oil consumption, not actually necessarily implemented, but is there, they've set it out as a policy, is actually introduced. And that's the line that begins to fall over a bit. And economists will say, well, if the price goes up, and I'll come to how much the price might go up again, but I suggested in the last slide that it might go up to $300 a barrel or more. Economists say if the price goes up, you'll get more production, because hitherto difficult to release oil will come out. And there's a historically there is a small amount of truth in that, but it's been very much overstated. But to accommodate that small amount of truth, this line from the geologist has just been shifted up a bit there. But I want to stress that we looked for the book at about 20 future scenarios for oil production. And we selected the one, not the one that was the most extreme, but the one that was what we felt to be the most authoritative, actually published in Sweden. And there were more extreme ones. Sorry, I should have said that with this we've got a 26% shortfall between supply and demand. Assuming there is some increase and assuming that the demand goes down. But I was just saying that there are more extreme projections. The Energy Watch group in Germany last year produced an even more steeply declining projection of world production. And they may well be right. So you have this best case by 2020, 26% shortfall between supply and demand. And of course, Economics 101 tells you that if you have more demand than you have supply, the price will go up. What Economics 101 won't tell you is what will happen if you have such a big discrepancy. Because Economics 101 normally talks about, you know, a few percent shortfall of supply compared with demand, usually for things like shoelaces or bananas or something like that. So there are very few indications in the literature as to what larger shortfalls might involve, and indeed very few indications as to what shortfalls in oil supply and demand might involve. We were able to find only two. One was a commission established in the US, high-level energy, US National Commission on Energy Policy, former energy secretaries and poobahs and so on, and they looked at this carefully and concluded that a 4% shortfall, 4%, would produce a 170% increase in the crude oil price. There was one other study done by the well-known Brookings Institution in Washington, and they looked at a range of shortfalls, and they went as high as 15%, and the 15% shortfall, 1.5, produced a 550% increase in the price of crude oil. We don't really know. We are in unknown territory here. The oil price has gone up by 7.5 times since 2002. I was reminded recently, I'm going to be in Hong Kong in September, and I've worked there quite a bit, and somebody there pointed out to me that in February 2002, when the oil price, the world oil price, was $18.30, I had written material for a client that said that we can expect massive increases in the world oil price by the end of this decade. And this kind person wanted to point out how correct I'd been. And so far, taking today's price and comparing it with $18.30, it is a 7.5-fold increase. And but where it will go beyond this, it is very unclear. The economics is not simple, and it is potentially tainted by mass worldwide economic collapse, which is really too awful to behold, but would inevitably produce a collapse in world oil consumption, and supply and demand would be met in that way. The purpose of the book is to point out how this can be avoided. Oil depletion, we've heard a great deal about climate change, and I'm certainly not in any way denying that there is something of a problem here. This is my favorite climate change chart. It's the longest continuous temperature record actually taken with thermometers and not derived from ice cores and tree barks, tree rings and stuff like that. And it goes back for 350 years. It's what's called the Central England Temperature Record. It's maintained by the UK Meteorological Office. And it's very instructive. It does indeed show a warming in the last few years, although all of that warming has been undone by the last 9 months, where we've had a cooling. And that last 9 months is not on here. But what is interesting is that we've had rises as steep as the recent decade in the past. Look at this one, and this one, and this one, and this one. Rapid increases in temperature are not anomalous. We may not be in a difficult situation, and if we are in a difficult situation on climate, we are not going to have early effects. The oil depletion issue, in my view, is a much more robust issue scientifically. The evidence is stronger for it, and it is an urgent issue. We are going to be in trouble in a matter of years. We are going to be in trouble, including Alberta, because so much of our society is dependent on oil, so much of it is dependent on cheap oil, and that cheap oil is basically, that era of cheap oil is basically over. The strongest impacts of oil depletion are going to be on transportation for 3 reasons. This book was published in the UK, so they call it transport there. They don't like the word transportation because that was the word that was used to describe the penal sending of prisoners to Australia for the rest of their lives or whatever. What you see there, and I'm going to use it again, is a gas ration coupon used in Canada in the Second World War. This one is from the oil crisis of the early 70s, sorry, out of gas. Another one from that same period, sales limited to 10 gallons. This one is a more recent one. It's in China, in Dogan, where there have been quite a lot of supply problems, distribution problems, and it shows a lineup for a gas station, which you can see on the bottom right. And all of these cars are waiting to buy gas there, and they're just letting them through one at a time. The 3 reasons. The first one is that motorized transport in the world is 95% fueled by oil. There is a small amount fueled by electricity, small amount fueled by natural gas, small amount fueled even by coal, propane, liquefied petroleum gas, etc., etc. But 95% of it is fueled by oil, or oil products, chiefly gasoline, diesel fuel, and jet kerosene. Second reason is that oil is the main, transport is the main use of oil. It's about